the McLaren may not be doing as well in Jeddah as in the first races. Why is that? We see it in today's video as we analyze the technical characteristics of the Jeddah circuit. Let's see how Ferrari will present itself. We analyze the conveyor at the rear positioned on the SF25. We also need to see Andrea Stella's statements on Lando Norris, who is somehow trying to defend him. And let's go. To also see some rumors about where Verstappen will race in the future. Before we start, please leave a like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos on the channel. With that said, let's get started right away. Let's be clear, after the excellent season debut in Bahrain, McLaren arrives at the 5th round of the Formula 1 World Championship with some unknowns to resolve. In Jeddah, the hot topic will be the thermal management of the front axle, a structural limit of the MCL39 that could question the potential seen in Sahir. Piastri's success in the desert has shown that the MCL39 is closer to the top teams than previously thought. Although the race pace was solid, the Australian's solo race did not highlight all the issues. Norris, forced to come back, instead suffered in rhythm, a sign that the advantage margin is thin and still unstable. They know well at walking that they cannot afford to slow down development. The Red Bull lesson from 2024 is clear. Whoever dominates tends to lose sight of their weak points. In such a compressed calendar, it takes little for the competition to get closer. In fact, McLaren has decided not to show all of its potential in order not to attract the attention of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, especially in view of the new directives on flexible wings expected in Spain. The Jeddah circuit is fast, technical, and very different from Bahrain. Here, the efficiency of the straight line is fundamental, and it is a weak point of McLaren, let's remember, but equally important is the stability in fast corners. The MCL39, with its high air elasticity, has shown to be very fast in transit, but not so much as top speed. However, a specific problem emerges: the difficulty in getting the front tires up to temperature. And this is one of the few weak points, if not the only weak point, of McLaren. This issue is related to the suspension architecture of the single-seater equipped with the highest level of anti-dive on the grid. That is the difference in angle between the upper and lower arm in the front suspension. A design choice that, while on one hand reduces pitching under braking, on the other hand limits the vertical load generated on the front axle, making it more difficult to thermally activate the tires. The team has adopted countermeasures during the winter, but the problem remains visible, especially in qualifying. However, an additional variable is added over a 186 miles distance. The decay of the Pirelli tire leads to a reduced ability to generate energy and heat, increasing the risk of graining, especially if the front is not working in the optimal range. Even on a less abrasive asphalt like the Saudi one, the trap is just around the corner. Finally, McLaren will have to manage another Achilles heel, which is performance in dirty air. The first races have shown that the car struggles to find rhythm in traffic. Think, for example, of the race in Japan, where both McLaren stayed behind Verstappen's Red Bull, despite being faster. And this penalizes the management of turbulence, which is less effective compared to the competition. In the wind tunnel, and at the computational fluid dynamics, only ideal conditions can be simulated. But the reality of the track is quite different. For this reason, I am convinced that if McLaren does not start there in front at Jeddah, in the first row in pole position, it could suffer a lot from the effect of dirty air. And end up wearing out the tires more, not being able to overtake the cars in front, also due to less aerodynamic efficiency compared to the opponents. Ferrari and Red Bull have been faster on the straights, particularly in Japan and Bahrain. We've seen it, and this will be a great advantage for these two teams, unlike McLaren. But not only that, the activation of the front tires will also be crucial on a circuit that is mostly done at full speed. Having a lot of grip on the front tires and activating them in the right temperature window will be crucial, and on this, Ferrari seems to be well placed this year, having a lot of load on the front, and instead a slightly more unstable rear. For this reason, we will find a Ferrari on the attack in Jeddah. In fact, this upcoming weekend promises to be fiery, and not just because of the temperatures. Rather, after Bahrain, where tire management decided the race result, in Saudi Arabia the performance on the dry lap becomes central. The qualifying will be the crucial session, putting McLaren in difficulty, which appeared vulnerable with new tires, and Ferrari could take advantage of it, ready to excel in the long high-speed bends of the Saudi track. With an average of over 155.3 miles per hour in qualifying, Jeddah is the city's Silverstone of the calendar. Fast bends, high aerodynamic efficiency required, and bends with over. The input is not a metric system unit. Please provide a valid metric system unit of lateral acceleration. The perfect ground for the SF25, which has shown itself to be particularly competitive under these conditions. As Charles Leclerc also stated, we have made a big step forward on high speeds, especially after the updates from Bahrain. Ferrari can rely on the new floor, not highly valued in the last race, and more regular asphalt compared to Suzuka, reducing issues with controlling ground clearance. However, we must make it clear that the red car will still have to deal with some weak points, the curves in support between 5, 9 and the long curve 13 that will test the stability of the SF25. In addition, slow sections like the initial chicane and the final hairpin will require impeccable balance. If Ferrari can dream, McLaren must defend. Jeddah puts the main limit of the MCL 39 bare, namely the sensitivity in activating the front tires, especially on the dry lap. The Arab track is indeed notoriously limiting on the front end, and if we said last race that McLaren was stronger on rear limited tracks, the rear end limits the walking team's performance on this opposite track, proving to be their Achilles heel. A problem made even more evident by Pirelli's choice to bring the C3, C4 and C5 compounds the softest in the range. So McLaren can't even rely on high tire wear. Due to minimal tire degradation in Jeddah, the inflation pressures have been raised compared to 2024. And this makes the activation of the front tire even more complex, increasing the risk of graining, a phenomenon that McLaren has already shown to suffer from. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri will have to find the right balance with the setup and thermal management, especially in qualifying, where confidence in the front of the car is essential to brush the walls at 300 per hour. And complicating the overall picture is the unknown of the compounds. The new Pirelli 2025 tires, revised in structure and composition, are still uncharted territory for the teams. The C5S, the softest tires after the upcoming C6S, have only been used in Melbourne so far. Simone Berra from Pirelli explained that fully exploiting their potential in Jeddah is very challenging. The smooth asphalt does not offer the same mechanical grip as the Bahrain, but it amplifies the adhesive grip, a combination that makes it difficult to find the perfect balance between temperature and performance. A curious detail is that often in Jeddah, the pilots improve their qualifying times with used tires. After the first thermal cycle, in fact, the tire works in a wider temperature range and instills more confidence despite a slight loss of grip. In this context, even the qualifying lap performance is a puzzle. A perfect balance is needed, bringing the tires to the right temperature, especially on the front, but without overheating the rear, in view of a particularly technical first sector. But not only Ferrari hopes to have a better weekend, Red Bull is also on the same path. In fact, in Jeddah, the RB21 should find a balance on the bends, but the issue of intense braking remains, as many as 6 out of 8 are high energy. Max Verstappen is counting on reduced degradation to compensate for the tire management deficit. While at Brackley, Mercedes smells the opportunity to bring home another podium. Mercedes has historically been strong on tracks that stress the front. It could take advantage of McLaren's uncertainties to get into the fight. With a solid single-seater, consistent, Jeddah could offer the first real sign of recovery for the Silver Arrows. So we can say that all the pursuers want to take advantage of this race in Jeddah to get closer to McLaren. And this is the right opportunity because it's a track adverse to the Woking team and more favorable to the other top teams. But we also have to talk about another very important detail on the Ferrari SF25. In the update package introduced in the Bahrain Grand Prix, Ferrari brought a less obvious but very interesting aerodynamic solution to the track.
Interesting. Next to
the more visible changes such as the underbody and diffuser, in Maranello they also worked on a more hidden area, namely the base of the rear wing, particularly on the sides of the central support. In the dry dock, the double microflap that was next to the monopile was removed. In its place, a small aerodynamic element has appeared that required great attention to be observed. The new conveyor has a precise function, redirecting the hot air flows coming out of the radiators, channeling them down between the main rear wing and the bean wing. The goal? Not to generate extra load, but to improve the efficiency of the rear axle, preventing those flows from disturbing the most important aerodynamic surfaces. This conveyor is made up of 2 flaps curved downwards, joined by a triangular side partition. This is an original design choice, the result of the work of the team led by Diego Tondi, and not a copy of the concepts already seen on rival single-seaters. Just like the unprecedented tongue on the new diffuser, this component also demonstrates the willingness to solve the problems of the SF25 with their own ideas.
According to estimates, this evolution is worth about a tenth per lap.
In a close championship, small gains matter. As the series heads to Jeddah, Ferrari has momentum. The SF25 dominated the Shanghai sprint with Hamilton, but a podium is still missing in Sunday's race. However, the anticipation of the package expected for Miami has given encouraging responses, and Jeddah will be the test bench to understand if the data collected at Sakhir corresponds to the track, confirming a growing technical direction. On the horizon between Imola and Barcelona, more substantial updates will arrive. Meanwhile, a slightly lighter rear profile is also expected, specifically for the Jeddah race, to exploit the greater load generated to the car body and thus gain in top speed, a key factor in Saudi Arabia. In Jeddah, we will find a Ferrari with a higher top speed, thanks to the new rear end, which will be introduced in the next Grand Prix, and also to the air conveyor located in the rear, which will help to divide the hot and cold airflows to avoid harmful turbulence and therefore improve the aerodynamic efficiency of the Ferrari. And all these points, these positive aspects, will then affect the lap performance. Because when the differences are 1, 2, 3 tenths in qualifying, every detail counts. And Ferrari has all the credentials to do well in qualifying, especially positioning themselves up front, because it will be crucial not to be in dirty air in Jeddah in order to have a good race. But let's hear what the impressions are from inside Ferrari. While the XR ensures that the correlation between simulation and track is good, Vasseur lowers expectations by talking about advantages in the order of hundredths. Meanwhile, Leclerc says that the bottom will be better seen in Jeddah. In short, everyone has their own vision. But the data so far say that the real gain has been there, but not so great. I also want to add that it's normal because on a track like Bahrain, you don't see aerodynamic improvements. And above all, we can't test the improved aerodynamic efficiency of the SF25 that we will only see on a track like Jeddah, and Hamilton and Leclerc are taking two different paths. The SF25 is a nervous single-seater, sensitive to setups, and every change has deep repercussions. Both have tried to adapt it to their own style, but only Charles has managed to find the compass so far. Last year, the SF24 proved to be a solid base until the unfortunate update in Barcelona that blew everything up. A technical error that also cost Enrico Cardile dearly, who we remember then landed in Aston Martin. From there, Vasseur had brought back order and confidence, but in 2025 we started from scratch, perhaps with too much haste and too many unknowns, including a new cohabitation to manage in the box. In Maranello, they chose to overturn everything. New technical philosophy, new chassis, and a driver like Hamilton from
integrate. The result?
A car that is difficult to understand and so far less effective than the feared McLaren, which instead has consolidated its strengths and relaunched with an already mature and competitive MCL39. In short, we know Ferrari took a big risk this year, and maybe it should have done so last year, and it's a bit late. That's why it finds itself chasing today. As Hamilton struggles to find his rhythm, Leclerc has already seized control of the situation. Charles appears to be a quiet yet resolute leader, responding with actions on the track. Fourth in Japan, fourth in Bahrain, always close to the podium and always consistent. It's not just about results, but about technical choices. Charles asked for a change in direction in development from the very first weekend, and the results are rewarding her. If they had followed Lewis Hamilton's early season path, it's a real possibility, understandable given his track record. However, the long one has been ill-suited for the SF25's reality. It's not yet about technical updates, but about approach philosophy. And Leclerc, who knows this team better than anyone, understood it before the others. It's not surprising that Hamilton is still adapting. Transitioning from the stable environment at Mercedes to the turbulent Ferrari team is challenging. Lewis seemed frustrated and disoriented, even though at the end of Bahrain he showed some signs of recovery. But for now, it's Charles leading the group, but Lewis will also arrive in a few races, this is little but sure. The problems with the SF25 won't disappear soon, but maybe the team should listen to Leclerc more. His statements after the first races suggested something went wrong in the winter work. And if he's the only one who has partially figured it out so far, then it's not a stretch to say that Leclerc is the true technical and sporting leader of this 2025 Ferrari. We are also waiting for the arrival of the most important update package from Imola and Barcelona, and only then will we understand if this season can change face. In short, this is the current situation of Ferrari that can hope for a good race in Jeddah, but the problems are not entirely solved even for the next races, that of Miami, Imola, and also Barcelona, where a very substantial update package will arrive, and that will be the result of the improvements due to the problems encountered in the tests in Bahrain, because we know that there is a difference of about 2 months between when we see the updates on the track and when they were conceived and developed. However, we must also acknowledge Andrea Stella's defense of Lando Norris, a stance I also support. Andrea Stella, speaking of Lando Norris, said he has more style than many champions, he never blames the team. Lando's difficulties are not a matter of character, but of technical feeling with the car. And Andrea Stella said that no champion is always comfortable. The Italian engineer has worked with champions like Schumacher, Raikkonen, and Alonso. And he said, I have never seen a champion feel totally comfortable when the car does not do what he wants. It's frustrating for anyone, even for the greatest. Lando has more style than most. He's transparent, self-critical, and doesn't blame the team. I've worked with drivers who would have lashed out at the engineers at the first opportunity. Not Lando. He acknowledges the problems and takes responsibility even when it's not entirely his. And Andrusel also set an example, the Q3 in Bahrain. He stopped the lap, immediately said it was his fault, even though we all knew that some last-minute changes had complicated things for him. Other drivers would have complained publicly. He didn't, and that makes the difference for us. In short, despite a less than perfect start to the season at McLaren, no one doubts the value of Lando Norris within the same team. The third place in Bahrain, achieved with a solid comeback, shows that the potential is there and the team remains united by his side. But now I want to take a stand too. In my opinion, Norris has merits. He is a talented driver. He is a driver who does not complain. Andrea is right.
However, Stella,
The real problem with Lando Norris is that he is not a driver who imposes himself on the team like Max Verstappen does.
and
Only the true champions manage to do it, trying to impose themselves on the team, give the right direction to follow, make a difference on the car, as Verstappen himself did in Japan, for example. And Norris has complained in the past. We must remember last year when he was in a fight with Verstappen, he complained several times about his behavior, when instead the same Lando had to respond on the track on equal terms with Max. In fact, not even on equal terms, because Verstappen had a car inferior to the same McLaren. So Andrea Stella tries to defend his driver in an attempt to keep the environment compact at McLaren. However, we know Norris is currently going through a moment of fragility and is not at the same level as Piastri. He will certainly have technical problems as well, but he can't regain mental stability to be able to respond on the track. He made multiple errors during the Bahrain race, including being unable to stay in the pit lane at the start. Later in the overtakes, like with the Leclerc that he defended and what he did to Hamilton that didn't work out for him. He made costly mistakes, finishing third despite having the best car. He should have finished second, considering the advantage that McLaren has at this moment. Having said that, the last very important topic is the future of Max Verstappen. We said yesterday that he could go to Mercedes, but there is another team open to this possibility. In Bahrain, the RB21 was beaten in qualifying by Pierre Gasly's Alpine, and in the race it even struggled to get rid of Ocon's Haas. A crisis, that Red Bull one, which if not quickly contained, risks pushing Verstappen away from Milton Keynes. The countdown has already started. If the updates expected for Imola do not make a difference, the risk of a break becomes concrete. Ralf Schumacher, who spoke on Sky Sport Deutschland, supports this and said if Red Bull does not make an immediate quality leap, Verstappen will leave the team. I'm pretty sure of it, and Mercedes is now complete. We said it yesterday too, that's why Max might look elsewhere. Ralf Schumacher stated, I think a great adventure awaits Max at Aston Martin. He knows Adrian Newey well. He won with Honda, and Lawrence Stroll just completed cutting-edge structures. The project is growing significantly. We know that Honda will indeed be the engine supplier for Aston Martin in 2026, so Verstappen's future is far from written. The pressure is now all on Red Bull, from which much more than a simple technical development is decided at Imola. The fate of an entire era is decided, and also pay attention to the clause in his contract that could release him after the mid-season results, after the summer break. We must be cautious about the possibility of a Saudi team entering Formula One, as suggested by the recent statement from the Saudi prince. It could happen very soon. Formula One is growing rapidly, and if Saudi Arabia buys a team, other companies from the Public Investment Fund will want to be part of that success. We already have a race, we sponsored teams, it would be natural to also have a team of our own. If it were to happen, it must be done right, with the will to win. It's a tough challenge, but why not? And this project follows the Saudi expansion in motorsport from Formula 1 to Formula E to the Dakar Rally from 2020. There are many projects involved altogether. Let me know your opinion on all the topics we covered in this video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss any videos on the channel. I leave you other related videos here from Rastra Tutor. We'll see you in the next video.